This is TWiT. What are we going to do about Social Security numbers? Now, we've rallied against this on the show often. We know, because the audience that we have is very intelligent and they've researched this themselves, we know that Social Security numbers were never intended to be our unique identifiers. In fact, it specifically states when you get a Social Security number and a Social Security card that you shouldn't give this number to anybody. It's not designed to protect you from identity theft. It's not designed to protect you from thieves. It was simply designed to give you access to a government record. Well, of course, that's not how it's worked out. Social Security numbers form the foundation of pretty much everything from our savings to our employment. That's right. When you go to apply for a job, you give them the Social Security number so that they can check your credit record, so that they can look through your history, so they can make sure that you are a trustable hire. Now, the question is, what happens when a relatively advanced society has put all of their eggs in an easily crackable basket? Chee, is there anything else that we need to say about Social Security numbers and why we shouldn't be using them?
OPM.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's another good one.
The reality is we're abusing a number that was never, ever, ever supposed to, I've actually talked to some of the folks in Social Security Administration and they just shake their heads. It goes, we didn't create the monster. We created something to handle people's retirement information, and everybody else decided that they weren't going to make the effort to go and do a unique number. They're going to use something else that was never intended for that. Well, let's fan the fire for next week, because cryptography does exist. We could do something that is changeable. What a concept. That's the big problem with Social Security numbers. You can't change it. You apply for it, you get it when you're born or soon after. And the Social Security number, the only people I know of that have ever been able to achieve a Social Security number change is WITSEC. So, yeah, we're abusing a system that was never designed for this. Time to start over. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I've been done with this forever. I think anyone with even a remote understanding of security understands that having a master password that once breached can never be changed is usually a bad idea. And that's exactly what we've had with Social Security numbers. Now, Lou, I'm going to throw this over to you, because some of the innovative solutions that I've seen, at least here at presentations in the Silicon Valley, have been dealing with unique identifiers and blockchain. There are a couple of companies that want to use the blockchain to make an ID that is both incredibly strong and replaceable if it ever gets breached. Does IT, and I'm even going to go one further, does the Silicon Valley and all of its ilk have an actual solution for this? And it has to be a solution that will actually be adopted, not just one that is technically superior, because it's not hard to get technically superior to a Social Security number, but technically superior and adoptable by all the entities that need to identify people.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. I think you come up with some kind, doesn't matter what the technology is, TWiT, all these other companies are using China blockchain for identity management. I think, once they come up with this technology, it, depends on how these companies implement the process of using that technology. That means that, even though the technology itself is not breachable or not discoverable of identity, it doesn't mean that the actual implementers, like for instance, you talked about it, Social Security was never meant for this, but people are using it for that. So I mean, when you create a technology, when I create software, an API or an SDK, I have to think about well, what if people don't use it for how I intended it to be used for? Will it still be secure? Will it still be performant? Will it still be, that kind of thing? And I think that these technologies are great, but I'm sure that researchers will poke holes in them as well.
Right. Chee, I've got a conversation going in the chat room right now with Reverend Dan Oreo, which I think he's an Android fan, so that's kind of awesome. But it's basically, employers are not supposed to ask for your Social Security numbers. In fact, no one is supposed to ask for your Social Security number. And I have a right not to provide my Social Security number, and yet everybody does. And everybody does because no one wants to hold up whatever it is that they're looking for. If they want a job, sure, there are other ways to verify my identity, but do I really want to annoy my prospective employer? If I'm a student, sure, I can find other ways to get my records other than my social security number, but it's a hassle. And we are in this weird spot where I think people have a recognition that they shouldn't supply their social security, but we still do. Why is it?
Inertia. That's the long and short of it. Look at it this way. In technology terms, if you're a corporation and you get bought or something, and suddenly you find yourself having to, say, change all the IP addresses in your organization, it's not that hard. Technologically, it's easy. But boy, is it a ton of work and a lot of gotchas in there. And, I think social security numbers can be equated to that. Yeah, it could be done. It's going to be a lot of work. There's going to be a lot of technology involved, a lot of fighting because everybody's going to want their solution. It's just a matter of something bad has to happen. And I think the Equifax breach just might be it. And, when we look at it, the White House guy, Richard Smith, then Equifax, what is that guy's name? Rob Joyce. There it is. He's the cyber czar for the White House. He's kind of saying the concept of a social security number in this environment being private and secure, I think it's time as a country to think beyond that. What is a better way to identify consumers in our country in a very secure way? I think that is something different than an SSN, a date of birth, and a name. Face it, the Yahoo breach got my full name, it got my date of birth, and got some other information. Not too much else, but collecting grains of sand, and pretty soon you have a complete record, and now you can start doing some really wacky stuff. So one thing I think needs to happen is I think we need to have the Congress or White House or both say credit freezes should be obligatory. No more charges for those. We need to be able to shut our credit history on and off at will. Then I think we need to, as a nation, come up with a real national ID, something that's based on cryptographic information that can be changed. Why can't I do, why can't we do a hashed value or a dual key? Yeah, let's do a dual key so that the citizen has the private key and the government only has the public key. Gee, what a concept. Gee, do you think that might work? We've had that for how long now? 1961 when Wes Peterson did that paper? Technology's there. We just need the will to do it now.
Yeah, and I think this actually very closely mirrors a discussion we had on TWiT 4 years ago with Oliver Rist, when we talked about the pain point for credit card retailers and changing the PCI standard so that we would start using chip and PIN. Well, we didn't quite get chip and PIN, but finally their financial losses were high enough that it forced them to move to at least a stronger way to verify credit card charges. Well, we've got the same opportunity here with Equifax losing half of all of our Social Security information, with breaches happening every which way every other week. Maybe the financial pain will be enough for CRCs like Equifax and TransUnion and all the rest that they finally say it's time. It's time to move to something that's not breached so easily so that we're not taking hundreds of millions upon billions of dollars of loss every year. Only time will tell.